His breath touched the curve of my shoulder before his hand did. One arm braced the edge of the kitchen counter beside me, the other found my waist like it already belonged there. He moved behind me slowly, without a word, like silence was part of the language we'd created. The tiled floor was cool under my feet, but everything else burned. My fingers curled tighter around the warm ceramic mug I wasn't even drinking from. The low hum of the refrigerator filled the space between us, the only mechanical excuse for the shake in my thighs. His presence didn't demand it waited, and I didn't resist. I arched back into him, and it was quiet. Not wrong, not right, just dangerous. I didn't flinch. I didn't say anything, because by the time I felt him all the way in, something inside me had already collapsed hours ago. He was younger, only by a few years, but enough for me to pretend it made a difference. Enough for me to pretend I hadn't been watching him watch me. Since the first time he dropped by with a flat tire and asked to borrow our air pump, since he complimented the silence of the house, said it felt like a place where people disappeared. I was 39, married, one teenager. He was my neighbor's son, back from grad school, doing contract work for a tech company nearby. He stayed next door with his parents, but was often around helping with groceries, carrying garden soil, offering to fix a flickering light in the hallway. He was polite, sharp, attentive in a way no one had been to me in years. And I noticed, worse I responded, every accidental brush in the hallway, every too long glance at my legs while I reached for the mail, every second his gaze lingered when I wore a loose t-shirt without a bra. What do you do when the one thing you're supposed to avoid becomes the only thing you crave in secret? It wasn't a plan. It was a moment, and I didn't stop it. The rhythm between us wasn't fast. It was deliberate, like he wanted me to feel every second, remember every motion. His grip tightened slightly, enough to tell me he'd thought about this before, enough to say I wasn't alone in this ache. When I leaned forward against the kitchen counter and whispered his name, Lucas, without meaning to, I knew. I couldn't pretend I'd slipped. I wanted it. Had wanted it for weeks. And now it was here, and I didn't hate myself. Not yet. I used to believe I could resist something like this. I was wrong. When it ended, we didn't speak. I smoothed my shirt and didn't turn around. He stayed frozen, like he knew the quiet mattered more than anything we could say, like sound would ruin something raw that had just bloomed between us. Or maybe he was waiting, wondering if I'd ask for more. But I didn't, because I already knew I would. Some secrets don't scream. They whisper, over and over, until they become part of your breath. The next morning, I made oatmeal like I always did. Same measuring cup, same wooden spoon, same burnt edge of cinnamon at the bottom of the pot. My husband sat across the table, scrolling his phone. He said nothing, didn't notice anything different. To him, I was still the woman who ironed his shirts and signed our daughter's school slips. Still the one who stopped asking for affection 3 anniversaries ago. And he never asked why. But to me, everything had shifted. I couldn't look at the kitchen island without seeing Lucas's fingers on the edge. Couldn't walk past the spot by the sink without feeling the echo of his breath on my neck. The way he didn't speak just let the silence wrap us in something I couldn't name. What the hell was wrong with me? I had a home, a daughter, a man who had never raised his voice, never hit, never cheated. But he also didn't see me anymore. He touched me like someone completing a task. Routine, gentle, absent. And I had made peace with that. Until someone else touched me like I was the last living thing in the room. Lucas. It had always just been Lucas. Quiet, observant. The one who stayed after a backyard barbecue to stack chairs without being asked. The one who noticed when a drawer stuck and came back the next day with WD-40. He was too familiar to be a stranger, too connected to be ignored, too intelligent not to know I felt it too. But this didn't begin in the kitchen. Not really. It started the first time I caught his eyes on my thighs when I stepped into the car. It started when he touched the small of my back in passing, and his hand lingered half a second longer than necessary. It started the moment he said, "You look good today," in a tone too honest to be casual. And that honesty, that was the most dangerous part, because I hadn't heard that kind of truth in a long, long time. I told myself I was lonely, that I was imagining things, that maybe I just missed attention. But deep down, I already knew the truth had slipped under my skin, hot and silent, like summer air before a storm. That morning, Lucas was still in the house. He hadn't left yet. I heard him moving upstairs through the old vent grates while I wiped down a spotless counter for the third time. The same rhythmic creak of the guest floorboard, always the third step from the door. He was still there, still too close, still the echo of the night before humming under my skin. My husband left for work at 7:48 a.m., just like he always did. Kissed the top of my head. Said, "Don't forget to water the hydrangeas today." Grabbed his keys, closed the door behind him. No suspicion, no shift in his voice. I didn't breathe until I heard the car back out of the driveway. Then I turned toward the hallway. The guest room door was slightly ajar. Not enough to say anything, just enough to see the edge of a shadow. Just enough for me to wonder if he was awake, if he was listening, if he was waiting. I didn't go to him, but I didn't look away either. Later that day, I sat in the laundry room folding clothes I had already folded the night before. Fresh cotton, artificial lavender, and the faint click of clothespins, it all felt too clean, too harmless for what I was thinking. My hands moved mechanically, smoothing shirts that didn't need smoothing. The dryer buzzed quietly beside me, its blue light casting that familiar glow onto the floor. That same floor where I had braced myself less than 12 hours ago. The image played in my head like it was already burned into the walls. His hand low on my back, his chest pressed flush to mine, the slow, full ache of it. I'd let him take me. No excuses, no half measures. I hadn't even hesitated. What kind of woman does that? The kind who hasn't been touched like she matters in years. The kind who goes unnoticed unless someone else is watching too long. The kind who forgets what guilt is until it's already rooted deep. I sat there, unmoving, dryer spinning beside me, and wondered, how long could I pretend silence meant it never happened? That afternoon, Lucas offered to help load groceries into the car. Said he was heading out anyway. I nodded, said, sure, told myself it was easier, faster, that it was just the polite thing to do. But the second he got into the passenger seat and the door shut with a soft click, I felt it again. That shift. Like gravity had changed direction and was now pulling us toward each other. I started the car, or tried to. Nothing. The battery was dead. Of course it was. I think I left the dome light on overnight, I muttered. He didn't reach for his phone, didn't try the door. Just sat there, still watching raindrops trace slow lines down the windshield. I didn't sleep last night, he said, not looking at me, just staring at the fogged glass. I said nothing, froze. I kept thinking you'd come back, he added. My breath caught. I turned slightly, just enough to see the side of his face. Did you want to? He asked. I should have said no. I should have lied. But my lips didn't move. He turned toward me, this time fully, his expression unreadable. You keep pretending it was a mistake, he said softly. But I felt how you leaned in. Don't lie to me. Stop, I snapped. Louder than I meant to. My hand gripped the steering wheel so tight, my knuckles turned pale. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I don't know how to go back to pretending. I looked away. I do, I whispered. I've been doing it for years. He didn't respond. The rain thinned. The silence returned. Neither of us moved to open the door. I didn't want to go back inside. Not to the dinner I hadn't started. Not to the chore chart on the fridge. Not to the husband who would ask how my day was and not listen to the answer. I didn't mean for this to happen, I said. He nodded slowly. You're not supposed to be the person I think about. He gave a low laugh. It wasn't joyful. It was bitter. Sad. Yeah? Well, you weren't supposed to be the one I wanted either. We sat in that car for what felt like hours. No words. No music. Just two people who had crossed a line and didn't know how to uncross it. The tension between us didn't explode. It hummed, low and thick, like electricity under wet soil. And I hated that I still wanted him, even now, even here. The next few days passed, like a bruise spreading beneath the surface is low, quiet and unavoidable. Lucas didn't come by the house for dinner, but I still saw him. Once at the mailbox, once walking his mother's dog past our driveway, once when I caught his reflection in the window while I was wiping down the sink. We didn't speak, didn't even exchange glances. But every time he was near, something pulled at me like thread unraveling from the hem of a life I thought was stable. He never pushed, never called, but I could feel the weight of his silence pressing into every room I walked through. One night, while my husband was upstairs helping our daughter with her homework, I stood in the hallway folding clean towels. I didn't need to. There were no towels, only the illusion of normalcy and the thin scent of dryer sheets. Lucas had texted me once. Just a photo. The guest room light glowing softly, empty. No words, just light. I stared at it for 5 minutes before deleting it. I told myself that meant I was ending it, that it was over. But deleting a message doesn't erase a feeling. It doesn't unmake the sound of his breath in the dark. That night, I lay in bed beside my husband. He fell asleep first, like always. I listened to the rise and fall of his breathing, steady, dependable. A man who would never betray me, never abandon me, never question me. And yet, I turned my back to him, not out of anger, not even shame, but because I didn't want to be touched by someone who didn't see the storm under my skin. The next day, Lucas showed up unexpectedly. He said he was dropping off a drill he'd borrowed from my husband. I said nothing about how the drill had been returned 2 weeks ago. He stood at the edge of the kitchen, unsure whether to step inside. Forgot something, he said casually. I nodded like it meant nothing. He turned to leave, but paused. His hand lingered on the frame of the door. Then his voice dropped. Can I ask you something? I didn't answer, but I didn't stop him either. Do you regret it? I looked at the floor, then up at him. I don't know how to answer that. He gave a tight nod, as if he expected it. I still think about the way you sounded, he said. My stomach turned, not from disgust, but from heat, from want, from panic. Don't, I said quietly, don't say things like that. He stepped back, hands raised slightly like I was fragile glass. But he didn't leave. Instead, he added, I think I need to stop coming by. I looked at him. Really looked. You think that'll help? He didn't respond, because we both knew the answer. It wasn't about presence anymore. It was about the space we had already carved out for each other. The space that lived in my spine, my mouth, my memory. The space that made everything else feel pale. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I walked down the hallway. That same stretch between the laundry room and the back door. I stood in the spot where it all started. I placed my palm on the wall where I had braced myself that first night. Closed my eyes. I could still feel it. The heat, the pressure, the tremble in my knees. I wasn't lost. I knew exactly where I was standing. And still, I didn't move. Because some memories don't fade. They lodge in the body. Like scars you run your fingers over in the dark. The guest room had been empty for nearly a week. Lucas hadn't stopped by. Not even for the things he actually had reason to return. I told myself it was good. That space meant healing. That distance meant control. But I didn't believe it. I found myself walking past the room more than usual, pausing at the door, listening, even though I knew there was nothing to hear. One afternoon, I went inside to strip the bed. He'd left his cologne behind nothing obvious, just the faintest trail of soap and something warm, like pine and late summer. The scent was still on the pillowcase. I shouldn't have leaned in, but I did. I pressed my face into the spot where his head had rested, and for one terrible, beautiful second, I felt everything all over again. The memory of his breath against my skin, the heat of his hands, the way he didn't ask, didn't hesitate, didn't speak, just was. Solid, present, undeniable. I startled at the sound of the front door unlocking. My body froze like it belonged to someone else. His footsteps were soft, casual. He wasn't rushing. He knew. I heard the door creak behind me and turned. He was already there, leaning slightly into the frame, not smug, not even expectant, just quiet, measured. I forgot my charger, he said, voice low. I nodded. Didn't speak. Didn't tell him to leave. He stepped inside. The door remained open behind him, casting a thin line of hallway light across the carpet, as if the house itself was watching. He didn't touch me right away, just stood close. His voice came quieter this time. Is this where you pretend it didn't happen? I didn't answer. Didn't step away when he moved closer. His hand found my waist. I let it. I could have left the room. I could have said no. But instead, I placed my hands flat on the mattress and leaned forward like I was giving up a fight I hadn't tried hard enough to win. His breath grazed my neck. A hand slipped under my shirt. The other tightened on my hip. Everything inside me responded faster than thought. And when I whispered, if you're going to do this, don't stop, I didn't recognize my own voice. He didn't reply. He just followed my body's lead. Fabric shifted. His jeans, my sweatpants, the soft sound of cotton dragging across skin was louder than the pulse in my ears. And then he was there, all the way, measured, certain, steady. I gripped the mattress harder. He moved like he had something to say, but no words to give. Only motion. Only pressure. Only the pace of someone who'd waited too long to pretend otherwise. My breath caught in sharp exhales. Not from pain, from panic, from release, from guilt, from need. He didn't kiss me, didn't whisper, just leaned over me like presence was enough. And somehow it was. When I came undone, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was surrender. He stepped back, breathing hard, adjusted his shirt, didn't speak. I stayed bent for a second, fingers splayed against the still, warm bed. I didn't cry. Not yet. He watched me, then said, almost apologetically, I shouldn't have come in. Yeah, I replied softly. But I didn't tell you to leave either. He hesitated, then added, I've wanted to do that again for weeks. I didn't look at him, just nodded. Barely. He walked out, closed the door behind him gently, and I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, still shaking. For once, I didn't feel empty. I felt real, and I hated myself for how good that felt. 4 days passed. Not that anyone was counting, but I was. Every hour, every time I walked past the laundry room, every time I folded a towel that didn't need folding, every time I saw the faint line of light where the guest room door used to be ajar, he hadn't come back. He hadn't texted, but the gray t-shirt he left behind stayed on the dryer like a ghost I couldn't bring myself to move. It smelled like him. Still, that clean warmth, something subtle but masculine like pine and wind and quiet. I sat on top of the washer that night, knees pulled up to my chest, gripping that shirt like it could answer something for me. My husband had taken our daughter to visit his parents in Fox Hill, 2 towns over. They were spending the weekend there. I told them I wasn't feeling well, and it wasn't a lie, not in the way they thought. Lucas came by once during those 4 days, dropped off something, another tool, maybe, stayed for dinner. We barely spoke. We didn't touch, but when we passed each other in the hallway, when I caught the scent of him again in the guest bathroom, when I saw his hand reach for a glass in the kitchen and noticed the veins in his forearm tighten just slightly, it was unbearable. Not because I didn't want him, because I still did, because I wasn't supposed to. I expected shame. I thought I'd feel wrecked inside, dirty, guilty. But what I felt was worse. I felt cracked open, like someone had split me down the middle and left me unable to put the pieces back. I hadn't told anyone, not my sister, not my best friend, because how do you confess something you don't even fully understand? He was too close, not blood, but almost family, and too young to be anything but a mistake I should have avoided. But I hadn't been lured. I hadn't been tricked. I walked into it, eyes open, and that was what scared me most. That night, I folded towels I didn't need to fold again. I started and stopped the dryer just to hear it hum, just to fill the house with sound, so I wouldn't have to hear my own thoughts echo off the walls. It didn't work, because he came back, later than usual, alone, unannounced, said he forgot something, didn't even specify what. I didn't ask. He stepped into the kitchen, stopped near the counter. His eyes didn't move. Neither did mine. Can I ask you something? He said softer this time. I nodded. Do you regret it? The air thickened. Time stretched between us like something fragile. I opened my mouth. but nothing came out. Because the truth was, I didn't regret what we did. I regretted what it meant. I regretted that it made everything else feel lifeless. But I didn't regret how it made me feel. Seen, needed, touched, like I was more than someone's habit. I don't know how to answer that, I said eventually. He nodded, jaw clenched, then looked away. I still think about the sound you made, he said. Quiet, almost like it hurt to admit. My heart pounded hard against my ribs. I clenched a towel in both fists. Don't, I whispered. Don't say things like that. He didn't apologize, didn't take it back. But he didn't move either. I think I need to stop coming by, he said. I tilted my head slightly. Do you think that'll help? He didn't answer, because we both knew it wouldn't. It was never about being in the same room. It was about everything that lived between us now. Things we'd let happen. Things we couldn't undo. Later that night, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. I stood in the hallway where it had started, where we'd first crossed that line. I pressed my hand against the wall where I once braced myself, bent forward, opened my mouth, and never stopped it. And I whispered, not to anyone, just to the silence. I don't know if I want to stop, or if I just want to stop hating myself for not. My husband didn't know. Or maybe he did, and just didn't know how to ask. He was the kind of man who noticed when the Wi-Fi was lagging, but not when my hands shook while slicing fruit. The kind who asked, everything okay? Only when the answer was already obvious and rehearsed. But that evening, something changed. We were in the kitchen. I was drying dishes. He sat at the table, scrolling aimlessly. Then he looked up. His eyes landed on me like they hadn't in months. Not just glance studied. His mouth opened, closed, like he was about to ask something, then decided against it. We hadn't touched in over 6 weeks. Not even a casual kiss. I told myself it was marriage. That comfort replaced passion. That routine was a form of love. But that night, his gaze felt heavier, lingering, and I realized something I hadn't admitted before. I had changed. Something small but irreversible had split open inside me. And it showed. Lucas hadn't come around in over 10 days. No texts. No drop-ins. Nothing. Except 2 unread messages I kept staring at on my phone. One said, still thinking about it. The second, I didn't come back because I don't trust myself. Not because I don't want to. I never replied. But I read them more times than I can count. I tried to pretend it was over. I cooked dinner. I helped with homework. I paid bills. But in the quiet spaces, those unbearable gaps between tasks, she was still there. In my spine. In my chest. In the way my lips parted when I heard footsteps that didn't belong. That night, as I stood rinsing a plate, my husband finally asked, "Hey, did Lucas ever say why he stopped coming around?" My stomach dropped. Not visibly, but enough that I gripped the edge of the sink. "Work," I said. "Got busy. He's on a project out of town. It came out too smoothly." He nodded, unconcerned, and returned to his screen. And that was the moment I realized I could lie too easily now. That the woman I used to be, the one who second-guessed everything, the one who needed to be good, was slipping away. Later that night, I stood in the hallway again. That same one, laundry room on the left, back door on the right. Middle of it all, the ghost of something I still wanted. I touched the wall, closed my eyes, and in the dark, I could still feel him behind me. Still hear my own voice saying, "Don't stop." It wasn't a memory. It was a presence. The next morning, I went to church. Alone. I hadn't been in years. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. Didn't wear makeup. Didn't dress to be seen. I sat in the third pew from the back. The place was mostly empty. One old woman with a bent Bible, a man in a suit with shoulders that looked tired. I didn't pray, didn't ask for forgiveness. I just sat there and let the weight of it all press down on me, because I finally understood something. I knew what I'd done, and I knew why. It wasn't about Lucas. Not really. It was about what he awakened. That burning need to be seen, to be touched like I still mattered, to be known in a way that made everything else feel unreal. I'd spent so long being invisible, filling space, managing calendars, remembering milk and soccer cleats and insurance forms, and for one night, maybe for several, I'd been real again. That reality tasted like guilt, but also like breath. Now I carry it everywhere. In the smile I fake when someone asks if I'm okay. In the hesitation I feel every time I hear the front door open, praying it's not him and dreading it's not. This isn't a confession. It's not a cautionary tale. It's a wound I cover in decency and dinner menus. And I don't know if it will ever close. Because somewhere, in this quiet house beneath the towels, behind the clean floors, under the ordinary, I'm still leaning against a wall, with my eyes closed, whispering to no one, "Please don't let this be the last time I feel alive."